Pentacle, Chapter 23, The Wheel of Fortune. It's a tarot card, not the show. With his curiosity piqued, Bruno left the bed and he stopped sulking, and Carina ranted about Harry Harlow's experiment on infant monkeys, and he had the monkeys choose between two mothers. One was a wire mother that provided food, and the other was a cloth mother that provided comfort. And at random times he would frighten the poor monkeys to see which mother they would run to, and most of the monkeys preferred the cloth mother over the wire mother, and they showed that infants needed more comfort than food. And he also ranted about the attachment theory and other doctor topics. This information provided Rodrigo plenty of food for thought, and he also felt like he understood Bruno a little better. And Rodrigo tried to imagine what it would be like to grow up in a loveless household. And Rodrigo had both his parents who spoiled him raw, and he has his little sister Teresa, and his uncle and aunts also spoiled him, and his family had always been a source of love, comfort, and security. And try as he might, Rodrigo could not put himself in Bruno's shoes. That night, three of them went on to the Chiva Rumba, and they got a night tour of the city to the beat of salsa music. And they drank much, and they were merry. And Carina drank so much that the following morning she couldn't remember how she even got to the room. And according to Rodrigo, they practically had to carry her to her room. And she asked for a shower, and she complained when they forgot to add conditioner. I do not even know why conditioner is so important to you. With or without it, your hair looks the same, said Rodrigo. It looks perfect, said Bruno, trying not to incur Carina's ire. Carina had gotten bored of ironing her hair every day, so during the vacation she had gone back to her naturally curly hair. Did we sleep together? Asked Carina. No, said Bruno. As a rule, I do not sleep with drunk chicks, and they sometimes drop on you if you rattle them around too much. Have you ever been truly wasted? Asked Carina. Come to think of it, I don't remember ever seeing you that big drunk, commented Rodrigo. I have a high tolerance for alcohol, like Bruno, and he always drank at a slower rate, and then he would stop as soon as his friends were drunk. Therefore, he was always the only soberish person in a sea of drunkards. And he said, I come from a long line of alcoholics from my father's side. So what is today's adventure? Asked Carina. We are touring the Castle San Felipe de Barajas, reminded Rodrigo, so I hope you brought your tennis shoes because this is going to be an uphill battle. Carina swapped out her sandals for her Nike shoes, and on the way out to the elevator they saw the deer roaming the hallways, and Carina happily shrieked with delight before bringing out her camera. And the noise she made scared the little deer away. Next time don't yell when you see the deer, said Rodrigo. I managed to get a photo, said Bruno, showing his cell phone. Nice shot, Bruno, said Carina, and send it to everyone. Bruno sent the picture to everyone like Carina commanded, and even his clients got a photo of the deer roaming the hallways. I have one better, said Rodrigo, showing a photo of a toucan. Wow, it is so perfect that it almost looks fake, said Carina, admiring the photo of the toucan. Here's the bird eating what is left of my breakfast eggs, said Rodrigo. A bird eating eggs, isn't that technically cannibalism? Asked Carina. It is if the eggs are toucan eggs, and birds naturally eat other eggs, such as predation is pretty common among hawks or falcons, explained Bruno. The conversation carried them all the way to the bus, and after she arrived they made it to the castle, and Carina descended the bus to admire the walls. And she noticed the little holes in the sides of the walls of the castle, and according to the guide, those holes were meant to hide shooters. And the passage was wide enough for the muskets to stick out, but narrow enough to provide cover. And the group started walking up the slope of the castle, and Carina took photos every step of the way. Hey, look at the statue, Carina, said Rodrigo, pointing at the statue of a man without an arm and leg, and he was wielding a rapier and walking with a peg leg. According to this guy, that is a statue of Blas de Leso, and he was in a lot of bloody battles, and by the age of 25 he lost his arm, leg, and an eye, said Bruno, reading a little pamphlet. And then he retired, asked Carina tentatively. No, he continued fighting. And from this castle he fought the British that one day attacked Cartagena, and even though he was heavily outnumbered, he somehow managed to lead his troops to victory. And 2 months later he died, said Bruno, before closing the pamphlet. Of his wounds, asked Rodrigo before yawning. He wasn't a fan of historical tours, but he wanted to pretend to take an interest in Bruno's interest. He died of typhus, said Bruno. How do you get typhus, and what is typho for that matter? Asked Rodrigo. Typhus is a disease caused by a bacteria. The bacteria is transmitted by lice and fleas, said Carina. Rodrigo looked at his exposed legs and he scratched his side nervously, and they continued walking up the brick steps, and they entered within a dark corridor, and the wind funneling into it provided a welcome relief from the blistering sun, and Carina saw a light at the end of the tunnel, and after squinting her eyes, she was greeted by the sight of a tower. Carina walked up the steps to reach the guard tower's windows, and from there, she saw a view of the city. Carina took a selfie with Bruno and her cousin Rodrigo. If your psyche was here, she would be patient a fit about you taking a photo with a tower, said Bruno. How so? Asked Carina. Well, you know, whenever the tower tarot card shows up, it always spells disaster, said Bruno. The tower isn't always a bad card. When it is reversed, it means averting disaster, delaying the inevitable, and resisting change, said Carina. Let's rise inside, and we have another venue to visit, said Rodrigo, changing the subject. The party walked inside the tour bus, and it drove them to the walled city, aka the historical district. And it had all of the original buildings from back to the colonial era. And Carina photographed everything while she fancied how her life would be back then. And when she remembered that she was a woman, she realized that life during the colonial times would suck for her. Men back then were the only ones who were allowed to have any fun. Carina entered within the Cathedral of Santa Catalina, and the exterior was orange with red bricks, and it looked both ancient and strong. And the inside was a bit paler than she expected, and it had clearly gotten a fixer-upper. The white walls contrasted greatly with the wooden roof and the golden altar. And at the moment the tour guide entered, they were having mass in the cathedral. And Carina wanted to stay for mass, but she had to stay with a group. And they passed by a couple of street vendors. And Rodrigo haggled in order to purchase souvenirs. And Cartagena had a strong bartering economy, and none of the prices were fixed in stone except in the modern shopping malls. The tour ended satisfactorily, and when dusk fell, Bruno took Carina on the horse carriage ride without Rodrigo tagging along. And Carina was finally spending some alone time with her boyfriend, and just when she was having the most fun, her phone began ringing. I must have forgotten to put it on vibrate, said Carina, looking at the cell phone. Who is calling? Asked Bruno. Carina saw the name Kane, and she sent the call directly to voicemail, and she said to Bruno, Nobody important. It could be one of your patients dying, said Bruno. Answer the call. It was Kane. He's probably bored of his mind spending all of his time in the company of animals, said Carina. And she wrapped her arm around Bruno's shoulders before saying, Now where did we leave off? The couple returned to smooching while they remained oblivious to the leering eyes of the carriage driver. And after 2 hours of fooling about, Carina felt like returning to the hotel, and she was tired of sitting for so long. And since the night looked so beautiful, she decided to go splash about the pool. And the novelty called the bath had already passed, and as long as she stayed away from the shadows, the bath didn't pay her any mind. She splashed about with Bruno while talking sweet nonsense, and everything was perfect in their world. And it eventually came time for bed, and she pretended to be too exhausted with the tour. So she went to sleep immediately, and she waited half an hour, and around midnight Bruno left the bed. And she slowly walked towards the balcony, and she pushed her face against the glass, and she closed her eyes in order to listen. Rook to D8, whispered Bruno. And Carina rolled her eyes when she realized that Bruno was playing chess over the phone, and with her curiosity satiated, she returned back into the bed, and after punching her pillow, she somehow managed to get them into a comfortable position. And the hard beds were part of the reason why she tried to tire herself as much as possible throughout the day. And as she started to doze off, she began to listen to this song in her mind. Your pillow will be made of rock, and your bed will be made of wood. If the pillow was made of stone, it would at least offer some semblance of lumbar support, moaned Carina. And her only consolation was the fact that they were only able to reserve an 8-day vacation on such short notice, and she only needed to put up with this terrible bed for a couple of more days. before being allowed to return home. And once she was home, she still had more days to fool around, and maybe she could go to the Keys, or maybe she could take a ferry to Bimini. That night she suffered another night terror, and her cell phone was ringing, and when she picked it up, a strange fluid dripped from the mouthpiece, and she touched it with her hand, and when she looked at it, she screamed when she saw that it was blood. Carina sat up in frustration. It had been a perfect day. Everything had gone according to plan, and nothing had gotten in her way of her happiness, and how could one call trigger such a stupid nightmare? In the morning, Carina called Kane, if only to clear her guilty consciousness, and she frowned when Oberon answered Kane's phone. Kane is sleeping right now, whispered Oberon. You're going to have to call him back later. If he's sleeping, tell him that I say hi when he wakes up, said Carina before hanging up the phone, and she fancied that everything was well. During breakfast, Carina got another call from Oberon, and when she answered the phone, she heard for a second Kane's voice saying, No, don't tell her. Don't tell me what? Asked Carina, giggling. Didn't you hear Kane's voicemail? Asked Oberon. I skimmed it for details, said Carina, with a cold smile painted on her face. Kane was, started saying Oberon when the call ended. Kane was what? Asked Carina before bursting out laughing. Anything funny happened? Asked Bruno. I don't know, maybe, mused Carina. If he didn't want her to know, it was probably something embarrassing. Kane and Oberon have been acting a little weird as of lately. You can tell all that over the phone, asked Bruno, raising an eyebrow. They have been acting weird since even before then, said Carina, and just a few nights ago, Kane told me that Oberon has been working out the courage to steal a kiss. Oberon is a horn dog, and he will kiss anyone or anything if you even show yourself the slightest bit receptive, said Rodrigo. I learned that lesson the hard way. Honestly, Rodrigo, you surprise me, said Bruno, laughing. I kid, said Rodrigo, quite happy with his joke. What does Oberon see in Kane? Asked Bruno out of morbid curiosity. It is his skin, or so he claims, said Carina, caressing her flesh, and she added, Oberon likes my skin as well, and he wants to melt into me. Do you think he likes to rub lotion on it? Asked Rodrigo. Will he use his hoe if Kane refuses to put lotion on it? Asked Bruno, referring to the silence of the lamp. How long does he have it, by the way? Asked Jennifer, jumping into the adult conversation. Jennifer, said Rodrigo, go back to playing with your Barbies. It is hard to play when you're speaking so loudly, protested Jennifer, and she was lugging about a mermaid Barbie she had brought for the trip. How old is Oberon, by the way? Asked Jennifer. He is 40, like Carina. So he's going to be 48 by the time I'm old enough to date him, said Jennifer, extremely disappointed. And she needed to find herself a new crush. Alright, that's the end of that chapter. Bye-bye, God bless.